it's me, Alexa, and today we're going to be talking about the Tamil language film Super Deluxe. The movie was directed by Thiagarajan Kumararaja, and it was overall very good. I do have, again, mostly positives to say about this movie. However, I do have one semi-big problem with it. Yeah. Also, as you may have noticed, I have some new glasses. This is my second pair of new glasses. I have some photos of it over on my Instagram, at Alexa & Co. And yeah, I'm quite a fan of them though. I like the other ones more, I think, but they're also more what I'm used to. I think these ones are more different. They have a kind of more rounded edge and they're a bit smaller, but yeah, I'm still quite enjoying them. This overall will be a spoiler-free review. I'm going to have a quick section where I go a bit more into my problem in ways that I cannot without spoiling, because that happens near the end. But besides that, this will be entirely spoiler-free, so feel free to keep on watching even if you haven't seen the movie. So Super Deluxe has a really cool story concept. Though it starts out, there's pretty much three main storylines, or kind of four. I don't know. You can argue a few. There's a whole bunch of different storylines with a whole bunch of different characters. They're all going about their lives with different issues that they have to face and different problems, and it talks about how they all eventually kind of connect, you know? And there's a lot of films kind of like that. They're like anthologies almost, and I think that this film did a really great job with that overall. One of the biggest compliments I have on this film is its ability to go between comedy and drama, and very serious drama at that, extremely well, especially in the first half of the film. The second half, it does get a bit more serious and less comedic, but the first half had so many moments that made me laugh, genuinely like laugh out loud. They knew exactly when to be serious and when to be comedic, and it allowed for this wonderful flow of storytelling that made you feel all sorts of emotions. Because there's literally, I laughed out loud quite a few times, but then there's a few scenes, like one at a police station, where I almost couldn't watch it. It was so emotional, and like I was so sad watching it. And this goes into, I mean, the entire pacing of the film. Everything about that was so well executed. You could tell that the director and everyone involved had a really strong grasp of storytelling and when to tell things when they did, besides in the one thing that I don't like. Before we get into that though, I do want to also mention the acting. This film had a lot of really talented actors in it. Vijay Sethupathi, this is my first time seeing a movie with him, and he blew me away. His performance in this was so moving and spectacular, and also the whole film. So obviously he plays a transgender woman, and the entire handling of her story and what she goes through is just absolutely gorgeously put, and it's so emotional. And I thought they did a spectacular job as well, because it's of course about her coming back to her family. Whenever she left, she was still a man. She comes back and now she's a woman, so she has a young boy who was so cute, oh my goodness. But anyways, and so they have this scene like where Vijay Sethupathi is explaining what transgender is kind of to their child, and I thought that it was explained really beautifully and well done, in a way that you don't often see in movies. And I can say that about a lot of this film, because they handle a lot of different serious topics that are very relevant today. I mean, they talk about this, they talk about marriage, they use a bit of a more extreme situation for the marriage, but Fahad Fasil and Samantha Kanani did a phenomenal job with that relationship. The entire way through, their back and forth was phenomenal, and how they handled the situation that they were placed in was, I thought, great. And that's a lot of comedy came from that, as well as some very serious and raw moments. And then of course you also have this group of kids, and one of the parents is a devotee to a god. There's a big struggle with that character between his faith and what's going on in his life, and you know, had doubt and such. I thought that character, who's Dana Sekaran, or Arputam is his rename that he gave himself once he found God, who's played by Miskin, did an absolutely amazing job of showing that struggle that he had internally as he was just fighting between his doubt and his faith. And then the children, phenomenal. I thought all of them did a spectacular job. They have a whole bunch of things they go through. I thought how each of the kids reacted to situations and responded, it felt very much so like a group of kids hanging out. So those are kind of the overall main stories that they have, and I think all of them, how they ended up like having small things that intertwine. It's all set in the same city, so of course they have like slight things that like affect each other, and I thought that how that was handled and shown was really beautiful and well done. Overall, I felt that the cinematography was really beautifully done. It was a great just kind of following them along. It felt very natural and blended in with the story extremely well. And I liked the color grading of it. It was very like tungsten, and it was very prominent, had a very stylistic feel to it, but that style I think fit the tone of the film, which was also complemented by the score, which was a little like fantastical at times, like you had the little like Star Wars moment, and you know, there's just a few, like the score was a little comedic, and it was, but also serious. It knew when to be comedic and when to be serious, the score of the film, and I think that it matched the tone and the style of the movie really well, paired with the cinematography as well as the writing and the context. So I think that it all worked together to create a really complete package in that sense. So my overall issue with the film, and I think that a couple times throughout it, the director tried for a cool idea that didn't just quite meet the execution. There's only really twice in the movie that this was an issue for me. I think everywhere else it worked well enough that it wasn't a problem and it flowed with the story. But there was one scene where they have it's like supposed to be through someone's like phone, and they overlay on the screen the like what you see whenever you're recording, like with the like red square and circle, you know, and like time that you're recording on the other side on an iPhone. That's what the used, and I felt like that was very unnecessary, and I appreciate trying new things with cinematography, but you have to have a substantial reason to use it. Like, it had to have some sort of effect for the, like, in the storytelling, both either visually or plot-wise. It needed to have a bigger effect than it did, and it just didn't. It was just there. And I felt if they hadn't had that there, it wouldn't have changed the scene at all. And so that made me a little disappointed, because I was like, if you're gonna try something new, you have to have a reason for it. You can't just do it because you want to. That is always my rule as a filmmaker. Everything has to have a purpose and reason. So that leads me to my big issues. My biggest compliment to this film is how amazingly realistic it is. And it's so raw and emotional, and the way that they combine that with the comedy is so well done. And then they have this one scene that, for me, really disconnected it from reality. It made me go, okay, what's going on? Now I'm watching a movie. Instead of, and I know I'm watching a movie the whole time, I'm analyzing it, etc. But the rest of it felt so realistic, like it could just be these people's lives put onto the screen. And then this happened, and it, for me, really made a disconnect. And it took me a bit to understand why it was even in there. And then once I did, I felt that the message that they were trying to deliver could have been handled in a much better way. I do not think that that was the correct way to deliver that message for this specific movie. Because it was so raw at times, and just the realism in it was so beautifully handled, adding this scene really just created a disconnect that the movie did not need, and it did not help the plot at all, in my opinion. So here is where we're going to go into a bit of spoilers as I further talk about that. Please, if you haven't seen the movie, I wouldn't recommend watching this at all these next few minutes. Skip ahead to whatever time I'm going to have on the screen. And yeah, just skip on ahead to there to see my rating for the film and my final overall thoughts. So, the alien. The second that she started unzipping her face, I was like, what is going on here? I do believe that there is life out in the universe, but I also believe that we have no idea anything about it yet. With a movie that touched on such real issues that go on in the world today, and then just to throw that in, it just felt like such a disconnect. It made the rest of it feel less real. Felt like a conspiracy theory, because there's of course a lot of those where the aliens walk among us, and maybe they do, I don't know, but there's no proof of that, and it made me, I don't know, it really disconnected me from the realism of the story. And I understand they're trying to say everything's connected, not only on the earth, but the entire world, and we're all just small cogs in the big, huge system. And I like that message. I appreciate that message. People do need to realize, step outside themselves a lot and realize that there's a whole lot more going on in the world and that they need to be aware of. That's an issue that is prominent in a lot of places. And I mean, everyone does it sometimes. You get stuck in your own little bubble and you forget about some other issues occasionally. And it's important that we don't do that. So I do really love this message, but in a movie that was so real, and it touched on such serious issues like transgender women, marriages, like lack of money, like trying to get money, going to crime because of money. I mean, there's so many different little messages in this that were so important and impactful, that having that alien in there that was just unrealistic based on our current knowledge of the world, and it just was such a disconnect for me, and it really disappointed me. All right, so that is it for spoilers, and let's get to my overall thoughts. Also about the ending, I feel like it was a little preachy. There's a lot of voiceover at the end that tells you exactly what the message of the film is, which I'm not too upset about. And I think if it weren't for that one scene, I would have been even less upset about it. But because that was the only way that that scene made sense, was by delivering this dialogue, it made it feel like a crutch. And that's why I wasn't a huge fan of it. Because I'm okay with, you know, telling me the ending occasionally. I prefer to discover it through the story. But if you really want to drive home the message at the end, I'm not too upset about it as long as you do it well. And really, they handled it fine. But just the fact that it felt like it needed to be there in order to explain why they had this scene that I don't think should have been there made it so that I wasn't a fan of it. So my overall thoughts before we jump into the shark rating, I was so ready to give this movie a great white for this first 75-80% of it until that one scene that I discussed happened. But then it just happened, and it really took away from the overall message and importance of the movie in my eyes. And you can disagree with me if you want. Please do. Let me know why you liked that scene, maybe, if you've seen it. Make sure to give a spoiler warning, though, if you're going to talk about it, so we don't ruin the movie for anybody. So everything outside of that scene and its repercussions, I feel, were handled extremely well. It created great emotions, both in laughter from the comedy as well as sadness or just seriousness from what was going on in their lives. And so you take that as well as the great cinematography. I really enjoyed the color grading. I know some people, it's like a little oversaturated or like a little tungsten at times, but I think that it worked with the style of the movie as well as the score. But so it was all really well done. And so because of that, I am still going to give the movie a tiger shark. That is my official rating for it. I don't know. It was a tough one for me to place because of how much love I had for the beginning and the vast majority of this film. And that scene just, I know why they did it as a filmmaker, but I really disagree with that choice. Personally, I do not think that it belonged in this movie. And so that's why I couldn't give it a great white, despite how much I loved the rest of it. So, but I'm still giving it a tiger because of how well handled everything else was. And for putting it in, they did it fine. I just don't think it should have been there at all. But yeah, those are my overall thoughts on Super Deluxe. Please leave all of your thoughts down below. As I said before, though, make sure to leave a spoiler warning if you say anything with spoilers, so we don't ruin the movie for anybody who has not seen it. It is available on Netflix, so if you have that, or if a friend does that and you can borrow it, go on there and give it a watch. I would recommend it still. Alright, so those are all my thoughts on the movie. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, feel free to hit that like button, subscribe, check out our Patreon, link in the description below, and I hope that you all are staying safe out there and have an absolutely amazing day. Bye!